Great to see so many familiar faces and new faces. Welcome, welcome, everyone. And thank you for your greetings in the chat. I think I just saw someone is from Rome, Italy. We've got Minneapolis and Missouri, St. Louis, Atlanta, Arlington, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Georgia, DC, Iowa. So fun to see. Utah, Chicagoland. Terrific. Mexico, wonderful. Great to see you all. I'm just going to take one more minute and admit folks, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I think there is some very fun, engaging, inviting, enriching material that we want to share with you today, and wonderful sharers of that content. So welcome. More friends coming in from New York, Hawaii, Maryland, Canada, El Paso, Nebraska. This is fun to see. Thank you so much. All righty. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know that folks are still coming in, and we're just going to go through some introductions and some context setting. So we will welcome folks as they join us this afternoon. My name is Chrisanne Valancourt Murphy, and I serve as the Executive Director of Catholic Mobilizing Network. We're just delighted to welcome you to Catholic Mobilizing's Conversations in Communion, Parish Dialogues for Connection and Understanding launch webinar. We are excited that you came to join us today for a sneak peek at our new formation program and facilitator guide that empowers Catholic parishes and communities to build a culture of connection and understanding using restorative practice of circle process. If you're here today, you are amongst the first to know about this new offering from CMN. So glad you're here. Before I give a bit of context for the new program, today's webinar is the first public meeting that Catholic Mobilizing has had since launching our new website and our new branding. If you haven't seen it, I hope you'll check it out. I think there's a nice kind of intriguing glimpse of it here on the screen. I'd be remiss not to take just a quick moment to share a little more with you about what these new things, the website and the branding, mean for CMN and mean for folks like you who are an important part of our national network. First, you'll notice that the CMN logo is updated. You know, CMN is having its 15th anniversary year this year. So if you've been around CMN for a while, you probably are familiar with our logo, and it hasn't changed all that much. It still has the white cross, it still has that brilliant red color, but it's got enough new elements that we want to share with you, kind of the powerful symbol behind it. So as you see here from the screen, the new logo is first, it represents communion, and that's represented by the inner circle and the outer edge of the logo. It reminds us of the values of the Holy Sacrament, which promote right relationship with God and neighbor. Secondly, you'll see the bottom kind of crescent, and that dark space within the logo, that represents Calvary. And it certainly signifies a place of immense pain. It is where Jesus was crucified by execution on the cross. But it's also a profound representation of profound redemption, transformation, and ultimately Christ's love for us. So that second element of Calvary is quite important. And then thirdly, the cross, which is truly the focal point of our logo. And it brings to mind the instrument of capital punishment, certainly, as we mentioned, and the sacrifice that was made, but also the power of hope over death. So the upper border of the logo now has no top. It goes sort of into the upper regions. It signifies a forward progress that we continue to make as a community and the promise that God has for us. So those are new elements of CMN's logo. The other is the branding elements that have to do with our tagline. So below the tag, the logo, you see that our work is about end the death penalty, advance justice, and begin healing. And that's a little variation from what we've had in years past. We absolutely, Catholic Mobilizing Network, remains steadfast in our work to end the death penalty and promote restorative justice. And that's not changing. In fact, today's webinar speaks to CMN's ongoing commitment to build capacity around restorative practices within the Catholic community. But we recognize over the last several years, as we've listened really intently and carefully about how to best describe and communicate CMN's work, we recognize that the terminology advance justice and begin healing more clearly communicates the heart of CMN's restorative mission. So I hope you'll agree that the website, the new look and feel of our branding, etc., captures the energy and momentum behind our work to accomplish CMN's bold efforts. Okay. So again, I just wanted to give you a sense of some new things that you might be seeing and what that means for our community. And now on to Conversations in Communion, a bit of context. When Pope Francis called for the Synod on Synodality in 2021, the original aim was to, and this is straight from the original documents, the aim was to inspire people to dream about the church we're called to be, to stimulate trust, to bind up wounds, to weave new and deeper relationships. I don't know about you, but when we read those words from CMN, we recognized that what was being called for with this synod was something that the aims of our organization and the aims of using restorative approach and philosophy and practices, it is reminiscent of the kind of building a culture of life that we feel called to be part of. And we saw this time of synodality as an opportunity to put the time-tested principles and practices of restorative justice into practices in our parishes and our ministries, to help us become the listening, reconciling church that we're called to be. Both synodality and restorative justice encompass a vision and a process for journeying together amid woundedness and division. And those things are very real in our current contexts. So both synodality and restorative justice are grounded in honoring human dignity, in leveraging the power of deep listening and authentic dialogue, with radical truth-telling to illuminate a path toward communion and ultimately healing. So answering this synodal call in the long term, well beyond the 3 years of the synod that we're kind of rounding out as we approach the fall in October, when that final synod gathering in Rome is happening. And, after all of these listening sessions in the church have happened, looking at the horizon beyond the 3 years of the synod will require some formation and new learnings in our parishes and our ministries to be practically and spiritually formed in this culture of encounter that the Holy Father calls for, this synodal way of proceeding that lifts up the human dignity of all. So it is our hope at CMN, and certainly our intention with the Conversations in Communion, that we hope to play some part in creating the conditions for healing, the conditions where reconciliation and restoration might be possible in the church, in our communities, and in the country. And we have so much more to share with you. But that is our aim and our intention, and certainly our prayer with this new program, with the manual, with the training. I want to mention to you that we are so grateful for the generous support of the Active Foundation that came behind CMN to do this work. This work also comes to you with a mighty labor of love from Caitlin Morneau, who's our Director of Restorative Justice, who has poured so much of her skill and talent into this, and really created an environment of co-creation with so many others to bring this forward. Lay leaders, ordained ministry leaders, experienced restorative justice practitioners, members of the Catholic Mobilizing Network Board, our national advisory. Caitlin really intentionally created a space for so much input and wisdom to be curated together in what you'll see coming forward with our Conversations in Communion. It also is not lost on us that this work has been profoundly shaped by our Indigenous brothers and sisters who have shared so generously their understanding and practices of circle process and their way of being that has really created for us a foundation of learning and inclusivity. So we are grateful again to our Native and Indigenous brothers and sisters. A couple of housekeeping details as we begin, and then I'm so delighted to introduce Cynthia Bailey-Mans to you. So just a couple other things. One is that please keep your mic muted, and you all have done that, I think. You're welcome to keep your video on. We love to see you when we're sharing this kind of content, and we're going to have time for Q&A, so keep tuned in. You can access the closed captions at the bottom of your Zoom by clicking the icon with the 2 small C's, so go ahead and do that if you prefer. We have someone, Emjali, who's purely dedicated to technical assistance. So certainly if you find the word tech under the participants and you want to chat her with any technical concern, please do so. And then again, just a reminder that we will be having Q&A at the end. Certainly, as you think of questions, feel free to add them in the chat. Sister Eileen and I will be trying to vet those out and save those so that we can offer those to the group in the end and get some questions answered. Okay. Finally, as I said, I am absolutely delighted to introduce Cynthia Bailey-Mans to open us up today. She is the Director of Adult Faith Formation at St. Joan of Arc Catholic Community in Minneapolis. She is one of the 4 lay people from the United States to participate in the Synod in Rome, and she'll be going back in October as well. So welcome, Cynthia. It seems particularly fitting that Cynthia is with us today, especially given that her parish really embedded and engaged and just animated synodal practices throughout its ministries, and really has a story to share about that. And Cynthia, we're welcoming some of your initial remarks as well, about how your parishes were engaged in sort of synodal restorative practices. And then we welcome you to open us up in an opening prayer. So welcome, Cynthia, and so glad that you all are here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Grateful to be here. Let us pray. Sacred One, please pour down your Spirit upon us. Please love us and guide us as we do the sacred work of being a healing presence to one another. Amen. During the Synod each morning, before we started our work, I prayed with this important quote from the homily of Pope Francis at the opening of the Synodal Path. The Holy Spirit always surprises us to suggest fresh paths and new ways of speaking. It is a slow and perhaps tiring exercise, this learning to listen to one another, bishops, priests, religious, and laity, all the baptized, and to avoid artificial and shallow and pre-packaged responses. Let us not soundproof our heart. Let us not remain barricaded in our certainties. At St. Joan of Arc, we are a parish that is deeply steeped in social justice and restorative healing work. We recognize the fact that people come to us with all of who they are, their culture, their ethnicity, their race, their identified gender, sexual orientation, woundedness, perspectives, values. And we know that all of who they are is not only loved by God, but needs to be a part of our community. Not only welcomed, but to be in a space of belonging. We practice this type of restorative justice and healing listening in most of our ministries, and we're teaching our children this year how to do the same in their faith formation. We recognize that the way to solve challenges and to really encounter the sacred in each other is to be with each other and all of our messiness, woundedness, hope, challenges, and dreams. In our conversations in communion, we will be called to embody our commitment to communion and healing through sacred presence and empathetic listening. And we are called to do no harm through our words or actions. The work of synodality is sacred work. It is messy. It requires patience and fortitude. It is being present to one another, listening to what is said and what is not. It requires honest self-awareness and a willingness to be transformed. The work of synodality is sacred work. It contains limitless invitations to embody God's love with one another. It is grounded in prayer. It is filled with laughter, wonder, and curiosity. And as part of the universal church, our journey together requires us to share God's love far beyond the physical boundaries of our parishes and ministries. Each day, I frequently reflect on the wisdom of Father Brian Massingale, a leading Catholic social ethicist and scholar in racial justice, who reminds us that social life is made by human beings. The society we live in is the result of human choices and decisions. This means that human beings can change things. What humans break, divide, and separate, we can, with God's help, also heal, unite, and restore. What is now does not have to be. Therein lies the hope and the challenge. My presence here today ties me to all of you on your journeys in this sacred work, and I am deeply grateful to be on this path with you wherever it may lead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you, Chris-Ann, for grounding us in purpose and prayer during this time. Thank you. So hello, everyone. I'm Caitlin Morneau. I get to serve as Director of Restorative Justice here at Catholic Mobilizing Network. And it has been such a joy to build and draft and pilot this program over the last 8 months. We are so delighted to introduce you to it today. I'm going to briefly outline our time so you know what's ahead. I'll start by explaining the program overall and then share the details about its particulars, specifically the facilitator guide and the training and how you can get connected to each of those. Finally, don't worry, we'll be sure to leave plenty of time for questions as much as we're able at the end. So, as Chris-Ann mentioned, Conversations in Communion is a formation program that empowers Catholic parishes to build a culture of synodality through the use of circle process, which we know is a foundational restorative practice. Ooh, I see one note in the chat. Is my voice coming through? Can I get a, okay, thank you, Krista. Marge, I wonder if Emjali might be able to help you out. Okay. If you are hearing about circle process for the first time, I'll tell you just a bit. So as a restorative practice, it is informed by Indigenous peacemaking circles, which is an ancient practice that spans diverse cultures and religions. For many of our ancestors, gathering in circle was and still is a primary method for doing life as community through sorrow and joy, transition, conflict, and strife. At its most basic, circle process involves participants sitting in a circle with a facilitator guiding a series of questions or prompts in which every person has an opportunity to speak and be heard, assisted with the use of a talking piece. Its combined elements create an atmosphere for deep listening and sharing, for equalizing power and voice, for arriving as our best and whole selves, and for putting relationships before issues, not avoiding them, but centering relationships first. These are all principles that are essential to recognizing our common dignity in ways that invite the Holy Spirit to lead our path and interactions. At its heart, the purpose of Conversations in Communion aims to do 3 things. First, build capacity for this deep listening, authentic encounter, and participation in Catholic parishes and ministries. Second, to equip small groups in the design, facilitation, and embrace of community building circles throughout Catholic institutional life. And third, to meet the varied needs for training, formation, and implementation support in this journey together as a synodal church. The program involves two distinct but complementary components that support both practical and spiritual formation of those involved. First, a facilitator guide, and second, a virtual training. And let me just say that every stage of its development was undertaken with you in mind and prayer. I also want to give a quick shout out to so many of those folks Chris-Ann mentioned who are involved in the creation. I see you, I know you are here with us, and I am so thrilled. So, what is in this facilitator guide? Let's get to it. As we mentioned, the facilitator guide well, actually, I hadn't mentioned this yet. The facilitator guide is going to be available in June, just next month, to order in print or download as a PDF. Thanks to the generosity of the Active Foundation, this 40-page booklet is available at no cost for download. And for print orders, we just ask for a small contribution to cover shipping and handling. Now, I want to talk to you about what you'll find inside. This is a little bit of a peek at the table of contents. In the first section, Welcome to Conversations in Communion, we cover nuts and bolts of the program, grounding principles, and complementary resources. In this section about why we need dialogue, this is based on CMN's deep listening and experience over the years, and reading the signs of the times, and making the case for why Catholics, why circle process, and why now. In the section on fundamentals of circle process, we go into detail about its origins, its elements, and its types of use. As for preparing a conversation, if you're familiar with restorative practices, it won't surprise you that a substantial section is dedicated to preparation. We take time to parse out what's involved in preparing a group, facilitator, the physical or virtual room, and ways to lay a foundation for introducing this process with your community. Next, we have constructing a conversation. Here we go into more detail about how to plan your circle process, create an outline, and craft meaningful prompting questions. Lastly, at the end of the booklet is a QR code that will take you to a web page of sample circle outlines. These outlines have been created by Catholic circle facilitators throughout the country, working in a variety of ministerial contexts, sharing from their wisdom and experience. Each includes not only the outline that they used, but also background about the choices they made and why, and learnings along the way. They're intended to serve as inspiration for what's possible. Okay, so you may be asking, is this manual for me? We are all arriving with a range of backgrounds, experiences, and interests. The Conversations in Communion Facilitator Guide is best suited for people who are discerning facilitation and want to better understand what the process involves before applying for training. It's great for people who are already trained in circle process elsewhere, who are looking for a refresher or to revisit the process with a ministry lens. Lastly, it's perfect for people who are curious about ways to broaden support for synodal processes and are looking for tools to engage their community. I'll also just say briefly that this facilitator guide is not intended to be used in isolation. If facilitating, it should be paired with training. And if you're engaging in other ways, it's great to pair it with experiences of participating in circle processes, which Catholic Mobilizing Network can help to connect you with. And finally, it is intended to be used in complement with other literature on circle process and synodality. If you are looking at this slide and this sounds like you, pull up your chat. We are dropping the link to a web page that has an interest form, and we want you to fill it out here on the line. Be sure to fill out that form, and you will be the first to know when the facilitator guide is available for order and download next month. Thanks, Lucy, for putting that in the chat. Now, I know some folks might already be asking, is the facilitator guide available in Spanish? The answer is not yet. During this first phase, we've really been focusing on honing the English version and are already in dialogue with Hispanic and Latino ministry leaders. In this next phase, we are actively looking for collaborators who wish to support this effort, not only in translation, but also dissemination and piloting Spanish language training. So go ahead and fill out the interest form and we'll stay in touch about these developments. All right, and now, before we say more about training opportunities, I want to pass our virtual talking piece to our friend and colleague, Father Larry Dowling from St. Agatha Catholic Church in Chicago. Father Larry will share a few words about the fruits of circle process in their parish. Thank you so much, Father Larry, and welcome.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good afternoon, everyone. We have been using restorative justice practices for probably close to 14, 15 years now. St. Agatha, we are now a unified parish in Chicago, St. Simon of Cyrene. The process is, we've implemented in a number of different ways in terms of community building circles, in terms of trauma circles, healing from violence. We brought various groups together, in circle process, parents, children, parents and children together, returning citizens, and a number of other different ways that we have brought people together. It really has helped us reach out. Right now we're a parish of about 400 families, mostly African American, but we service another probably 1,000 families in the community through some of the restorative justice programs that we offer in terms of parent, mutual empowerment of parents, in terms of ways that we just continue to reach out. One of our more recent programs is a mentoring program that we've been able to hire 10 mentors, all from the community, all from off the streets, formerly most of them criminally involved at one point in time, but people who have really are now sharing their gifts of what they've learned to bring and to engage people in the community in coming together in building relationships in circle process. One of the things that the group does every other Monday night is hold a community dinner with about 80 to 100 people, and come together, break bread together, and then everyone is invited to go into smaller circles to have conversations. Again, community building, but also very much to integrate things like mental health, dealing with trauma, different resources in the community, those sorts of things to just help people and encourage them, to use them, but also to pass those on to others and invite others into the conversation. The long-term goal of that is to ultimately, engage a critical mass of people in formal community organizing to bring about change in the community here, here on the west side of Chicago. So that has been a major focus and goal for the restorative justice practices. We have other staff members who are on the streets every day, engaging parents in parent-to-parent outreach, in working with young women, with young men in the community. Again, the circle process. We're even incorporating circle into particularly our parish committees and ministries, particularly pastoral council and finance committee, where every meeting has to start out with at least 20 minutes of sharing, prayer, and sharing, in circle, kind of a way to deepen relationships within the community and within the committee. That ultimately, people immediately want to move into a meeting, but actually helps the meeting move along quite well after you've had the relationship building at the beginning of the meeting. It's a way to evangelize and really teach people how to talk about their faith and reflect on faith, and which hopefully they will, encourage others to do, and and that will spread out into the community around us. So those are just a couple of the ways that we engage, any classes that we hold here, we always start out with a check-in circle and a check-out circle. Again, just to implement different ways of using restorative justice for community building. I mean, that's what Jesus was very much about, was community building, and his healing was not just about individuals, but about healing individuals and reintegrating them back into the overall community. So that's been the power for us of using restorative justice practices.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Father Larry. Your stories just illuminate how this approach is not just about what we do within the parish walls, but how we go forth and be a church in mission as we are called to be. Thank you. So now it is my pleasure to share more with you about the companion training for conversations and communion. In this 3-session virtual training, you will identify and understand the key elements of circle process through experience. You will personally integrate the practical and spiritual alignment between circle process and synodality through prayer and reflective sharing, and discern varied types of circles as they meet the needs of your particular context of ministry through practice. I mentioned that the training happens virtually over the course of 3 3-hour sessions. And we space these, we expect to hold these monthly. And they're spaced out approximately by a week, with intentional time between for taking it in, integrating, and bringing these learnings into dialogue with your ongoing ministries and small groups. So the first session focuses on foundations of circle process. Cohorts of 10 establish a learning community in which they share an immersive experience of circle process. In session 2, conversations that make way for communion, groups discuss the flow and form of circle process and learn varied types of circles that can be used to host conversations in communion. And in session 3, charting a path forward, participants draft, share, and receive peer-to-peer feedback on their own conversations in communion outline. What's more, we strategize tailored approaches for implementing this program in their particular parish or ministry. So, about the logistics. As I mentioned, it includes the structure is 3 virtual 3-hour sessions taking place over the course of a month. We are planning to have cohorts of 10 so that there's enough time for sharing and really interactive participation for the whole group. They'll be offered approximately monthly, beginning in the fall. And what we plan to do is have different sessions offered at different times of the day, because we know everyone's availability is different. So some weekdays, some evenings, some weekends. Our trainers will be, it's a co-training model. So every training has 2 trainers, which is a combination of CMN staff and collaborating Catholic circle practitioners who bring a range of experiences, again, in ministry and parish settings. We'll be really excited to introduce you to some of these trainers later this summer. In terms of expectations, we do expect participants to be present for all 3 sessions. As we mentioned, it's really highly participatory. And so that's important not only for individual learning, but also the group formation and experience. There is a registration cost of $150. That said, we anticipate making scholarship opportunities available. And applicants should be currently active in a Catholic ministry, small group, or leadership. We'll say more in a moment about what this means. If you're considering this, we also welcome and encourage you to consider applying in pairs to support then having a co-facilitator in your environment. So if you're thinking, why should I attend this training when there's a whole facilitator manual involved? Well, reading about the process is one thing, experiencing it is another. This training is an immersive, prayerful formation experience in a cohort of peers, with the accompaniment of experienced facilitators from similar contexts. And by participating in this training, you become a part of an active and growing community of practice that's not only walking with you in that small cohort, but has continued offerings and support once it's finished. Okay, so who is this training for? This training is for you if you lead small groups in Catholic parishes or ministry networks. If you have, and that can be in whatever role, staff, volunteer, either is great. It's for you if you have some level of prior experience with restorative practices and/or synodality. This is because as a virtual training, this prior orientation helps to enrich both the individual and group experience when you have some context for what this work does look like in an in-person setting. And finally, this training is for you if you desire to become a facilitator of these processes. We know there are many ways to support the process, and being facilitator is one of them. A note. This training may not be for you if you are not currently active in a parish or in a Catholic parish or ministry. Right now, we're really focusing on equipping the Catholic community because we realize, because of the timeliness of the call to the Global Synod on Synodality, we realize how attractive, I already know my Protestant practitioner friends, we've been talking, we know how attractive this is for folks in other denominations. We encourage you to consider the facilitator guide as a resource, and whenever possible, CMN can help to connect you with folks who we know might be doing this work in your denomination. So happy to stay in relationship in those ways. This training may not be for you if you wish to be trained in facilitating harm repair circles. We know that's another use of circle process, but the intention of conversations in communion is really to focus on those community building circles, which can attend to a range of needs. But harm repair is a really particular kind of process that this is not designed to equip people in. Here again, if this is your desire, let's find another way to connect, and we'll do what we can to connect you with other trainers in that field of restorative justice. And next, this training may not be for you if you support the use of this practice, but don't see yourself facilitating. Utilize the facilitator guide to start conversations and encourage others who you think would be great facilitators. And everyone here, we welcome you to join the community of practice, and we'll put that link in the chat as well. Just a note that because this program is really designed to build capacity, we're in discerning who participates in these trainings, we're likely going to prioritize those who haven't been previously trained in circle process. But there again, if you do already have that training, we want the manual and the community of practice to be supports for you. So again, we are going to encourage you to open up that interest form that we're dropping in the chat again. And if you see yourself taking part in this training, fill out that form. And even if you don't, you'll see that there are options there. And so once again, by filling out this form, you will be notified when that application for training becomes available later this summer. Okay. And so I know there are likely wonderful questions generating in your minds. We encourage you to make note of them. You're welcome to start putting them in the chat or hold them for a moment. But for right now, I am really excited to pass the talking piece to one of our companions in this journey, Mirta Garcia. Mirta is administrative assistant for continuing education at the Institute for Pastoral Studies at Loyola University Chicago, and played an essential role in the piloting of these trainings. Over to you, Mirta.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yes, Mirta Garcia from Loyola University. We offer an intensive week-long certification in restorative justice. And part of our training, we invite Caitlin to share with our participants the amazing work that Caitlin does around restorative justice, circle training, as well as the amazing mission that Catholic Mobilizing Network has. I recently graduated from the School of Continuing and Professional Studies here at Loyola University with a bachelor's in pastoral leadership. For my capstone project, I partner with CMM, specifically with Caitlin. This opportunity opened the doors to participate and co-facilitate in the pilot training for conversations and communion. In addition to facilitating and participating, as part of my capstone project, I constructed the evaluations process for the program. As the circle keeper, participating in the pilot training gave me new ideas to enhance the circle practice for our restorative certification program here at Loyola. But training also gave me space to discern where else in my community I could participate and share circle practices, such as, my parish. But
Mirta, can I interrupt you for 1 second? We've gotten a few folks in the chat. It's just a little bit hard to hear. So I'm not sure if you're wearing, I can't quite tell if you're wearing earbuds or if you can maybe a little closer to the mic, but we want to hear what you're saying.
oh,
Try again.
is this a lot better?
That is clearer. Thank you for moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, so I move on and just share again that as a circle keeper participating in this pilot training gave me a space, room to discern where can I share circle practice beyond here at the certificate program at Loyola. And of course, the parish came to mind. But beyond that, who in the parish can I partner and have these conversations to possibly start conversations in communion, this fall or possibly early next year. A major takeaway in participating in this training was the spiritual nourishment that I experienced at each of the sessions. I felt that I was standing in holy ground with an amazing group of people who also share the same passion and zeal for creating space in community building. I'm beyond grateful for the participation and collaboration in this life changing experience and program. I would like to share a few quotes and praises from our participants. You all have built a wonderful container for learning, exploration, and reflection. The tone and atmosphere of all of these aspects of the training radiated peace, holiness, companionment, and joy. And I can testify that that is 100% sure. Another person from the parish staff shared that the circle process offers an authentic, safe practice for individuals less likely to have the opportunity to have their voice heard in an influential space. We have a few more praises and quotes. Overall, this was an amazing experience. The facilitator guide was easy to understand. Our trainers put everything into practice and engaged all of us present. And lastly, the training really modeled what we are being invited to do in a beautiful way. It was a wonderful experience.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mirta, and thank you. I'm loving all of the community support in the chat. That even where sound was fuzzy, we were supporting one another. So thank you so much for your reflections, your support, and sharing voices from some of our folks who were part of that pilot training with us. All right, so I am just going to reiterate a couple of the top line things to know, and then we're going to open up to questions. So the first facilitator guide will be available for order and download in June, by the end of June. The training application will be available by the end of the summer, likely August, along with more information on session dates and details. And those training cohorts will begin in October. So if you want to stay informed about all of these, fill out that interest form if you haven't already, and we will be so excited to send the information your way. And with that, I want to open it up to your questions. Our staff has been collecting what's coming in. Please continue to add your questions in the chat. We want to make sure to wrap up in time for announcements and closing prayer before the hour. So I think we probably have about 7 minutes, and we will answer whatever we can. So Chris-Ann, where should we start?
Thanks, Caitlin. And thanks, everyone. Okay, I think there's questions about really just how to get it started. One is, how would a parish go about finding individuals who would participate in the actual circle? Can you say just a little bit about that?
Sure. So this is why we really have small groups in mind, because we see and to encourage folks to think about starting where you are. So whether you're on staff or part of a social action group, part of a Bible study, part of catechesis, part of religious education, to say, oh, this is where I already have trust and relationships, and this is a great group to say, hey, folks, want to try something new? And then because they already know you and love you and trust you, that what we find with those we're piloting with is that it's those groups who are really at the ready to say, like, yeah, let's give this a try. And then this process is so invitational that when you have the opportunity to try it out with a small group that already exists, then you can either invite other folks into that process, or say, you have a group member who's part of another ministry, and then they're gonna try it out there. So in that way, it kind of spreads. But we really encourage you to think about and discern starting where you are. What's next?
Perfect. That's really helpful. Also about how do you inform folks? How do you begin? And maybe this is part of the training, and that's okay if we should save it till then. But how do you begin to inform folks that you're going to start doing circles? So you have a group, you know just who you want to use it with, but then how do you broach that?
Yeah. And those are exactly the kinds of questions that we love talking about in the training, and we've carved out space for in the manual as well. I think one of the just really wonderful sections to develop was the part on building a foundation of how do we establish those relationships and trust if they don't yet exist. And again, tap into them where they do, but outside of any circle process before that starts, how you just start a conversation about, this is something I'm learning about. Will you learn about it with me? And what are your areas of concern that you would love to see this kind of fruitful and humanizing dialogue convene around? So how do we build those relationships, identify those opportunities, and then based on what we've learned in those relationships, tailor invitations to conversations and communion based on the needs of those you're collaborating with and of the community.
Very helpful. Thank you. Lots of interest in the virtual or Zoom nature, can it be, I mean, we often think of parishes and small groups, RCIA and others, you know, that you're going actually to the parish or to your community center. Where can we do this online, and what would you offer about like that context?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. That's a lot of the reason that we created the training to happen virtually, because there are also wonderful opportunities to train in person, and we can connect you with those too. But we created this virtual training because we know that, especially since the pandemic, but I think even before that too, there are ministry groups who have been meeting virtually across distance for a long time and continue to. And there are parishes for whom, since the pandemic, they realized, oh, we can get together on Zoom. Let's keep doing that because it's more accessible for folks. So in both the facilitator guide and in the training, we parse out what are the elements that are, and the core principles that are universal, that they should never be sacrificed, and abide in those throughout the process. And then when as we know whether this group will be convening virtually or in person, how we make choices about adaptations and engagement for virtual settings, what that looks like to really abide in the integrity of the process, while leveraging this incredible connective tool that we have over Zoom and the internet.
Excellent. Very helpful. And speaking of accessibility, there was a question about recognizing that the guide is not yet available in Spanish. Would you recommend, or do you think it could work if facilitators who are bilingual, you know, take the training, use the guide, and do real-time translation, or would you say wait?
I would say if someone is bilingual and wants to participate in the English training, awesome. The part about what we have the capacity to kind of facilitate in a bilingual way for a bilingual group has a lot more nuance that we need to take into account and work out and prepare for. So if that is you, if you are bilingual and interested in participating in this training, please apply, let us know, and let's be in dialogue about how we can learn from you also in this process.
Super. There's also a question about certification. You know, there's a guide, there's a facilitator guide, there's a training. Do people walk away with a certificate? What should folks expect?
Yeah. So I will just take a moment to, remind folks, reiterate that Conversations in Communion, this program, it's not a blanket certification to host any and all kinds of circle processes. We are cognizant of that there are many ways to become skilled in this way of convening. That said, as someone who has completed the training, CMN can provide documentation of your participation in that training, along with an explainer of what it entailed. All right. It is 2 minutes before the hour, and so I'm sure we didn't get to all of your questions, but I will look forward to spending more time with them afterward and seeing how we can just fold in your curiosity into our continued rollout of this program. Again, we are just so excited to be in relationship with you and for you to be here with us today. So with that, I am going to pass the talking piece over to Maura to make just a couple of closing announcements, and then we will gratefully close in prayer led by Don McCrabb from the U.S. Catholic Mission Association. Over to you, Maura.
Thanks so much, Caitlin. I am Maura. I'm the digital content manager here at CMN. Just wanted to offer a few quick kind of closing announcements about some other opportunities here at Catholic Mobilizing Network that you might want to get engaged in. So first, most related to today's webinar is you'll be receiving a recording of this webinar later this afternoon. We welcome you to share that with colleagues, friends, and fellow parishioners who you think might be interested, who wasn't able to attend today. So share that recording with them. It's on YouTube, so it's very easy to just share the link And of course, also share that interest form with them as well, so that they can get tapped into CMN and we can share all of our updates with them going forward. The second invitation for you is, of course, CMN also works to end the death penalty in the US, and a key component of that work is prayer. We're rooted in prayer in all things. And so once a month, we gather for a virtual prayer vigil to pray for all of those impacted by capital punishment in the US. It occurs on the first Friday of every month. And so next week, being a first Friday, we'll be gathering virtually on June 7th at 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you're interested in praying with us, I invite you to register for that prayer vigil and join us online next week in prayer. And lastly, frequently CMN hosts introductory workshops on restorative justice. These are a great time to come and learn more about the principles and practices of restorative justice, its applications in ministry, and just a whole lot of basic information that kind of gives you, a jumping off point for what you can do with restorative justice. So if you attended today and you're really interested, but you're realizing you might need some more of that background information, definitely sign up to attend one of our intros to RJ. The next session will be on June 17th from 12 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern. So register for that and join us.
Thank you so much, Maura. And thank you so much, Don, for leading us in a closing prayer.
Let us just pause for a moment and be grateful for this time to be together as a community of believers. The prayer comes to us from Pedro Riveras from Guatemala. It's entitled Listening. Much more than hearing will our listening, that vain words are carried away by the wind, and to enter into idle chatter outside the path of the synod. Courage is asked of us in speaking on the way to better discernment, our hearts uncovered and the hearts of others to be found. The successful encounter is not nameless, nor are efforts anonymous, for in the midst of it, we have the one who amazes. From the Spirit comes this reinforcement, and from him we ask that he may unmask what we have within us of twists and turns. We pray this as we pray all things, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Don. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.